Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Draft. I'm sitting here with my good pal, Frankie Abbott. Make sure you're following him at Frankie Films on Twitter. He's posting different clips and cut-ups all the time. All these free agent news, and I'm excited to get into it today. It's a blast of an episode. You know, the last two episodes I talked with on Monday and Wednesday, I talked with Bree and Zach about the free agents, and it was kind of instant reaction. Now I feel like for a good portion of these, I've been able to sit down and watch the film and get an actual real good, analysis on these guys. So it'll be a fun episode. But Frankie, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. March Madness has been going on today. There were some crazy upsets. It was like the first game of the day that I think it was Furman hit a crazy three to end up winning it, and I exploded next to my girlfriend and scared the shit out of her, which was really funny. But no, it's been a pretty good day. Like you said, excited to dive into these free agents, share a bunch of my thoughts. It's been like Christmas for Broncos. We're one of those teams that our winning comes in free agency, I guess. As sad as that statement might be, are we the Jaguars? Who knows? So, it's time. It's let's talk draft or Broncos offseason.
Hopefully last year's Jaguars, Frankie. Hopefully last year's Jaguars. We're looking like a team that is building upon something, and everyone when the Jags lost. Everyone's talking about, they're a team that no one wants to mess with. Hopefully that Jags. I hope not the Jags in the years prior, to your point.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we had a really exciting, since our last episode last Thursday, it's been really fun. The Broncos have made, to your point, a ton of free agent moves, and we have a ton to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a really, really good episode. And let's hop right into it. I want to first talk about one of our most recent ones, Samaje Perine. Cincinnati Bengals back, a really big back, a guy that's made an interesting niche, I think, in the league. But Frankie, what are your general opinions of Samaje Perine? Do you think it's a good signing? Do you think it's a bad signing? Let us know, man.
I like the Samaje Perine signing. Not expensive, not a lot, not a ton of guarantees, not super, dedicate him into the future. But as far as a back that can offer you, I think a lot of something on all three downs. He's a great pass blocker, pretty decent out of the backfield, making catches. I think a good north-south runner. Just a solid all-around player that I think is just a really good complement to this backfield. Doesn't necessarily limit them in any way. Doesn't, super eliminate the option of Javonte coming back later in the season. Gives them a decent option that they can roll with for a little bit. You might want to get something that's a little bit more explosive out of the backfield. I will say I do think it probably, outside of bringing him onto the practice squad, probably does make it so you don't necessarily want to bring Latavius Murray back just because you don't want to have two 230-pound north-south runners in the same backfield. Kind of limits what you can do there a little bit. But a good signing, in my opinion. You didn't end up overspend on the running back position, and you spent on the offensive line. So that's a thumbs up for me, and they can go take a day 3 back, which we're all about.
We are all about that. I love a good day 3 back. Running back scouting, day 3 running back scouting is the best scouting. That's the most fun. Running back is just a fun position to study for obvious reasons. They get the ball all the time. For the guy that makes all the moves, everything like that. Samaje Perine, though, Frankie, I am a fan of this. And I said this yesterday on the podcast as well, but he's a guy, I'm going to make these 2 statements, and, people are going to look at me crazy and say, what are you talking about when I say both of these together? But he is a really good signing. I like it. I also think the Broncos should get a better runner of the football. Those are 2 things that go hand in hand here, because Samaje Perine, his role and what he is so good at isn't necessarily just getting the ball 20 times a game. I don't think that's where his value lies necessarily. Can he do that? I think he can. But where he is best is in the pass game. I think that's his best trait. I think he's an elite pass protector in the backfield. And I also think he's a really good check down option. And he has been good on in the past, where he's this 230-pound back that DBs don't want to tackle in open field, So that's where he's elite. He is a good runner as well. But I think the Broncos could withstand to take another guy that you feel comfortable, giving the ball to 20 times a game in the backfield if you so had to. I'm kind of curious, Frankie, what are your opinions on that? Do you kind of view him the same way as I do, or do you have a different opinion there?
No, I completely agree. One thing I will say, just kind of echoing what you're saying, but like getting to have a really good pass blocker and a guy who can play on third down has been something Denver definitely lacked last year, but I'd say has kind of lacked the last couple of years, especially with the loss of Melvin Gordon. As much flack as he receives and as much flack as I've given him, he was a pretty good pass protector and a really good player on those third downs and those, plays where you kind of need to keep in an extra guy to pick up that blitzer. So I think Samaje Perine can fill that role really well and hopefully fill a really important role for Denver, who has just needed to bolster their ability to protect their quarterback for whoever knows how long at this point.
Right. And you know what, Frankie? General theme of this free agency.
Yeah.
Especially on offense. If you can block, you're making the team. Even Samaje Perine, their running back is one of the best running.
Tried to get Allen Lazard. They just want every blocker.
Exactly. Every single offensive player they've tried to go target has been a good blocker at their position. And Samaje Perine, even the running back, is no exception of that. So I'm happy with it. I think he's going to have a clear role on this team. I think that, like I said, the Broncos can get another guy to make it more exciting. I think specifically someone with a little more juice. That's what I would be looking for. And hey, Sean Payton does run a running back by committee. This is something that I think plays right into that. I would not be shocked at all if the Broncos drafted running back with a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, a fifth-round pick, anywhere in the draft. I would be fine with them taking a running back. And, the title of this is, how does free agency affect the 2023 NFL draft plans? Frankie, where would you feel comfortable with the Broncos taking a running back with their first pick in this draft?
Honestly, yeah. At this point, it's really gotten – I kind of said this before free agency started, but one thing that we've seen out of George Payton, or we've seen out of the Broncos the last few years, is that they've done a pretty good job. I'd say they enter their offseason with a lot of needs, and they've done a decent job of at least finding a body that I don't want to say comfortable, but you're fine with at least rolling out as your starter for the season. And I think they've done a really good job of that. Safety, I'd say, was a need. They were able to bring back PJ Locke. I think, if they end up losing out on a receiver, that could be a possible need. They were able to bring in a running back. We saw them bring in a guard and a tackle. We've seen them fill a lot of these positions where what might have seemed like they almost need to force themselves into a pick during the draft. They don't really have that situation anymore. So one thing that's great about this draft class is, as we've touched on before, the running back class is really good for Denver. Honestly, a lot of the positions that are good line up pretty well for Denver this season. They've done a decent job planning that way out. So, I'm down wherever they feel comfortable. If there's a guy that is at decent value, and what's, again, cool about this class is I think there are guys everywhere. Heck, if they end up somehow getting into the second round and a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs is available, sign me the heck up. There are so many options throughout this entire class that if they end up wanting to wait until later in the draft and try taking a guy like Dwayne McBride or something, if he ends up falling, or, something
that would be elite.
Tons of options, they've got a ton of options. I almost expect them to go with running back at this point. As I've stated many times, I think most smart teams should take a day 3 running back whenever possible, just because they just always seem to work out. And if you can keep your running back room cheap, that's the best way to go. So yeah, I think wherever they feel comfortable doing it, wherever they have a guy that they think is the best player on their board, swing away, George, swing away.
Totally. And I think that kind of moves us into our next thing here. Broncos been big on offensive line. Let's first start off with former Baltimore Ravens guard, Ben Powers. I know, Frankie, we're both a really big fan of Ben Powers. Just tell me why you like him so much.
Ben Powers really just impressed me in pass protection. I know that might sound like, I don't know, there's obviously only two types of blocking. But I guess for a guy that played for the Ravens, that gets to block for Lamar Jackson, that gets to do so many of these things, I wasn't expecting him to move so well. He's such a big body and such a guy that I feel like has a bit of, I don't want to say a reputation, but I feel like Baltimore just has a reputation for getting these mammoth humans just to bully you over the entire time while their guy does things that you've never seen another human being do. So Ben Powers moves really well. Really dynamic player that has great feet, both in the run game and the pass game, can pass off blocks really well on stunts. I was super impressed. He can block well on extended plays because, Lamar Jackson is going to force you to kind of keep blocking for upwards of 4 or 5 seconds. Has experience doing that and does that really well. Ben Powers was, in my opinion, an excellent signing. I think he's going to be our Randy Gregory of this year, that me and you are just we are immediately on the Ben Powers train. Tape just kind of blew us away right off the bat. And yeah, man, what were your thoughts on Ben Powers?
I'm right there with you. I was shocked at how he was moving. When I think of Baltimore Ravens, I think a very specific brand of football, right? I think smash mouth football. And when I think smash mouth football, I kind of think of, you're probably not as good in these other areas. And I came to the fact that I think Ben Powers is fine and actually does really good in these other areas. Him as a puller or lead blocker in those scenarios, he is so good at hitting those landmarks a lot of the time. And I was talking to Frankie about this before the show, but a lot of the times it's like, hey, the linebacker might move out of the way and the run might still work because of that, because he doesn't want to get hit by that big offensive lineman and kind of avoids him. Or maybe, you're able to use how agile you are to get around him and make the tackle. Ben Powers gets a body on guys in open space pretty damn good. He really does. It might not always just be a blow up pancake block on a pull, but him going around, and that's a hard block, by the way. That is not an easy
He's got a wide
block.
Frame too.
Yes, these are 300-pound men. Asking them to go from guard to the other side of the line of scrimmage, and not only but to then go get to second level and hit a linebacker or something, that is not easy for these huge human beings to work in space like that. And I thought Ben Powers was terrific in that area. I also thought he was a really good pass blocker. And I also did think he could move people in the run okay. I maybe a little less as I figured a Baltimore Ravens offensive lineman would be, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad by any means. I think he's a super solid signing for the Broncos overall. I'm super excited to see and have Quinn Miners and Ben Powers on both sides of my offensive line. That is fun and that is exciting for if you're a football nerd fan like Frankie and I are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me is that the types of things we're going to be able to see an offensive line that consists of athletes like Garrett Bowles, like Ben Powers from what we're seeing, like Quinn Miners, who knows what they do at center if they keep rolling with Lloyd, and Mike McGlinchey too, who is an impressive athlete. Like, you can do a lot of things in the scheme where that's going to have a lot of these linemen pulling. That's going to be, I think, incorporating a lot of the screen game we're seeing. This is going to be an offense that I think is going to run a lot more of these type of, maybe sneaky little gadgety type playing or plays, I think, underneath Sean Payton. And I mean, these guys are going to be excellent at that. And like we keep saying, I think Ben Jones is going to be a huge upgrade for them. Props to Dalton Risner for what he's been, but I'm very excited for what I believe is a huge upgrade in Powers.
So, okay, that was going to be my follow-up question, Frankie. What makes Ben Powers a better offensive lineman than Dalton Risner to you?
So to me, from what I've seen, he has a much better ability to communicate with the rest of his offensive line. I do think from what I saw, he is just better at like communicating, picking up stunts, whether it's passing off protections, whatever it may be. I thought he was a lot better at that. I thought he just kind of plays a lot better through the whistle sometimes, not to knock Dalton at all, but I think sometimes whether it was just kind of the environment that was in Denver last season, there wasn't necessarily as much effort as you'd maybe like to see, as much, grind as you'd like to see out of your offensive lineman through the snap. And I think you see that out of Ben Powers. So I think that would kind of be the biggest thing for me. How about you?
Yeah, and I'm kind of in that same way. I like Ben Powers will get pushed back sometimes, but I like sometimes, and we'll get into McGlinchey every once in a while when he does have bad pass blocking reps. I rarely see him just get like swam over on a quick play where it's 1 second quarterback is getting hit by Ben Powers' guy moves, like those quick moves. But I will see him get bull rushed every once in a while. That's kind of where I wish that he could sit down better. I wish that he could really just anchor down and down into somebody. And that's really like my only critique in pass pro. I think his feet are terrific. Frank and I think we both released our own clips on Ben Powers because we were both really excited about him. And the pass blocking reps that I highlighted, and I think you also highlighted in yours, are pass blocking reps where it's like the guy is trying to make one of those quick finesse type moves, and Ben Powers is sliding his feet and moving him. And guys, when you are a quarterback and that's happening, it's opening up windows. I want that to be highlighted. If these defensive linemen are getting pushed out of the play or getting slid out of a play, the window just extends in pass pro.
Yeah.
So I liked seeing that. I think that is the more valuable thing because I don't think Ben Powers is bad at setting an anchor. That's the one thing where it wasn't amazing, I guess.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but I think Dalton Reisner was even worse at it. Was
Yeah.
much what I was going to say.
I would agree. I would agree. And I mean,
point there.
So then one other thing I'd say about it too is, I mean, you see Ben Powers, like he loves to help out his fellow offensive lineman. Like when Ben Powers doesn't have something to do, he's going out and he's laying a body on the guy who's, taking on his left tackle. That's one thing I liked as well. Like as you've mentioned a ton throughout the recent episodes, like this is a team that's trying to build an identity, and I think Ben Powers fits that identity really well. Clearly, a guy that enjoys just getting physical with other players, enjoys imposing his will on the opposing defense, and that's something you want. And I think that's something that Ben Powers brings.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the more interesting one, Frankie. We both agree on Ben Powers here. I want to know your opinion on Mike McGlinchey. It was a big signing for the Broncos. The Broncos, I think, in their mind, and we'll have a conversation about the quality of player they get here. In their mind, it's the first right tackle they've got since Orlando Franklin that's going to be on a multi-year deal, and it's the right tackle somewhat of the future. But with that being said, I want to know your opinions on him because I've been reading your tweets. I've been talking to you privately. And it's not as enthusiastic, I think, as others people would assume. So what is your opinion on Mike McGlinchey?
Yeah, so Mike McGlinchey, I don't want to paint this perception that Mike McGlinchey is a bad player because that's not true. Like Mike McGlinchey's fine. I'd say he's an okay to maybe slightly above average, maybe slightly below average tackle. He's like right in that range, But the Broncos paid him as an elite offensive tackle. And there are reasons that you can see that are very evident on the tape why the 49ers weren't willing to pay him as an elite offensive tackle, or the Bears weren't willing to pay him as much as the Broncos did. I think a big thing for me, and I think I overvalue pass protection a bit too much, but I mean, it's a passing league right now, is Mike McGlinchey is just not a great pass protector. This is a guy that was clearly not trusted in the San Francisco offense to be left one-on-one, whether it was on third down. Anytime he's facing above average pass rushers, he's getting kind of nuked, to be completely honest with you guys. Like, this is a guy who struggles. He's got slow hands. He's got, I don't think his hand placement is very good. He's very big, but he doesn't play with very good leverage. So a lot of his strikes aren't as powerful as you'd necessarily like them to be. He gets worked around pretty easily on that outside shoulder. I think he's better he is a good run blocker, but I think that it's kind of a little bit, I'll say this, and I think this is kind of something that I'm not trying to hold against him. I think there's kind of this perception that he's maybe a bit better of a run blocker because he got to play on the 49er offense, which is arguably the best rushing attack in football. I'm not trying to say that he isn't as good as, no, I am trying to say that. I'm not trying to say he isn't good, but I'm trying to say he's not as good as I think you would expect, or maybe as the fan perception might be coming from the offense he was. This was a guy that was given so much help from George Kittle. And guys, I can't emphasize how good George Kittle is at blocking. There are literal plays. Disgusting. I'm watching George, and this might sound like hyperbole, but there are games where I'm genuinely thinking this to myself, where I think Shanahan trusted George Kittle one-on-one with pass rushers more than Mike McGlinchey. You're watching straight up heavy sets, and George Kittle is fully being kept into block, and Mike McGlinchey is just going to help out the guard. He's just leaving George Kittle alone. This happened a lot. You're seeing a lot of receiver motioning to the side, and he's stepping in the way. He's running a shallow route so that the edge has to move around the receiver before he can get to him. You're seeing running backs chip. You're seeing a lot of assistance given, and when there's not assistance given, it's pretty ugly, guys. This is a guy who doesn't get his punch in quick enough, and then ends get a hold of his chest plate, and they toss him, man. There are 3 to 4 plays a game where this guy ends up on the ground. I can't lie, and it's disheartening. And I know a lot of people will see his frame at 6'8", kind of 310, whatever he is, and think this guy's this monstrous mauler, which he can be at times in the run game, but he doesn't necessarily play like it, in the pass game at all. He kind of looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane a little bit at times, and that's just not necessarily what you want to see when you're paying a guy as much as he's getting paid. I'm not trying to say he's going to be this mass failure that's going to blow up the season. I'm saying when you're paying a guy as much money as you are, and it seems like Denver's kind of getting to the end of their rope in the cap game maybe a little bit this season, and they're considering making moves where they're trading receivers because they don't want to pay them in the coming years. Well, the reason you might not have a ton of money is because you're spending premium prices on a guy that is probably closer to average. And, as terrible as it is, spending premium money on average isn't always a great thing. So that's my That's my McGlinchey spiel.
You know what? And Frankie, like I said this before the podcast as well. I've seen a lot of people I respect or usually have opinions that are similar agree with this take. I haven't sat down and watched a ton of Mike McGlinchey yet. That is coming tonight, so stay tuned. But I do want to give you some pushback just because of what I've seen online, and I think it's important to do it. So my thing on this would be that right tackles in the NFL rarely hit free agency. And if you think that you can go find a guy that can play a right tackle for you on a multi-year deal, they're going to get overpaid. It's just how much you're willing to overpay, right? That's not necessarily excusing it, because I think the lesson here is draft and develop so you're not in this situation, or at least try, because the Broncos haven't tried at right tackle. Like, that's just is what it is. They have not tried. So I think the lesson is draft and develop. But if you are going to go into free agency and sign a right tackle on a multi-year deal, I really do believe that it's how much are you willing to overpay, and that's pretty much what it is. So what do you make of that? And I'm just curious what you make of that comment.
No, I completely agree. I mean, this would be a much different conversation if last year they drafted like a Jamari Sailor or something, or like, if in the past few years they had grabbed one of these day 3 tackles that me and you really like, instead of whatever they've done with their day 3 picks the past few years. Like it is one of those things where it is just they haven't developed it properly, so they are just kind of making an overinvestment. And you are completely right. Tackles who hit the open market tend to get overpaid, especially the top ones. Like Mike McGlinchey is one of the he is one of the top 3 markets that hit the tackle this year. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I guess I'm a little concerned because I don't know how many years they're going to be willing to keep him around. Like, is he a 3-year answer? Is he a 2-year answer? Or is next year, are they saying, man, this is going to be another $19 million cap hit, and like this is our tackle, and maybe we're moving off of Russell Wilson? I guess those are just some of the things that concern me. But I do think you're completely right, where it's like tackles hitting the market just end up being expensive, and they just kind of had to pay if they were going to end up upgrading at the position like they wanted to.
I also want to ask you this. Okay, so I also want to ask you this. I was talking to you beforehand. Again, I keep saying this, but it's true. Some teams value the certain traits higher than others. And we were talking about the identity of the Broncos. Do you think Mike McGlinchey fits that identity of the Broncos? What do you think about that? That's kind of a question of, I'm just trying to gauge why the Broncos would overpay for him.
Yeah.
Because I think that we could all watch him, and it's hard for me to believe that everyone I appreciate in this is kind of agreeing on it, and yet the Broncos just disagree. I think there's a reason why they overpaid, and I'm curious if that is why.
So, I mean, I think he does kind of – it depends on, I guess, on what you define the identity as. Yes, they are wanting to move towards a run-first offense that I think this guy fits very well. I think he has experience doing some of the things that he's going to have to do a lot in Denver, and I think that they kind of recognize that. And, again, I think it's kind of one of those things where they're just saying, like, enough is enough almost. And I guess that's kind of the main thing where it's like, I hope these moves that they make this year aren't like I hope it's a sign of things to come almost, if that makes sense. Like, don't make these your last moves. Continue to make investing in the offensive line your prerogative for building up this offense. Because then I think it's completely fine, Like, I don't have a problem if Mike McGlinchey also, is the first signing of many that help improve this offensive line. I do have concerns if there's belief that, like, okay, we've now solved offensive tackle for the next few years because we got this elite guy, when in my mind, he's really not that elite of a guy. And, like, a team that was already like, here's just another side thing. This is kind of a side tangent. Like, I think fans need to kind of almost ask themselves a little bit, like, put themselves in the 49ers shoes. Why were the 49ers, a team that's consistently been near the Super Bowl, willing to let this guy go? I have so many people being like, oh, so many of these hand issues he's had can be coached out. I don't know anyone, the 49ers have one of the best coaching staffs in football, and their offensive line coach, Forrester, has been an offensive line coach in the NFL since like 1996.
Yeah.
I am pretty sure that he did his best with Mike McGlinchey to try to help him with his hand issues, and that, they probably just decided we'd be better to move elsewhere. And that's not me saying that they were necessarily right, but I think we need to, as a fan base, kind of like ask more questions instead of assuming, I think that's a bit better of a way to handle it,
Yeah, no, I get it, Frankie. I totally get where you're coming from on it. Yeah, we have a comment. I thought PJ was coming on. PJ is coming on tomorrow. Tune in at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. PJ Locke, that is. He just signed a big contract extension today. Make sure you are coming in tomorrow if you want to catch. I think it turned into a little celebration, so I'm excited to have him on.
That's going to be awesome. Make sure you guys are tuning in.
Yes. We have another comment. My guess is they will chip a lot on that side with the new shiny tight end. And that brings me right into our next conversation here, where we'll be talking about Chris Manhurst. We got him from Jacksonville. He's a big tight end. I think he's 6'5", 255, if I'm remembering that right off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a little of him the other day. And hey, he only had 7 receptions on the year, but he did get a lot of playing time. And that is for one reason. It's because he is a damn good blocker. Or he gives a lot of effort in the block. And then he's also this big guy that could possibly move people. Like, that is why he's on the field. And I think, that was a great point. I do assume with what Frankie's talking about, we will see him chip a lot over there. And it was kind of a tandem thing. So we're curious, what are your opinion on Manhurst there? And I'm going to keep this Broncos spend big on offensive line graphic up. Because
he's a sixth offensive lineman. He's a sixth offensive lineman. So, I mean, like, I have one comment on that comment. And it's like, maybe if you think that the right tackle you're signing, you literally need to sign an extra tight end to make sure that he gets chip help. Maybe he isn't worth the 4th highest right tackle contract in the league. Just my opinion. Maybe if you automatically assume that we're going to need an extra blocking tight end to keep the right side of our offensive line safe, you might not be worth that much money. But whatever, that's a complete side fact. Yeah, Manhurst looks awesome. It seems like he's a heavy run split, pass split type of guy. We're going to see him on the field a ton on those early downs, trying to body up people. We'll see him in on those play action sets. I was a decent Eric Tomlinson fan last year. Seems like he'll be pretty much filling in that role, and hopefully we'll do maybe a bit better job of it. It seems like based on what a lot of people are saying, he will. Yeah. I don't know. Based on what I've seen out of the tape, he looks fine. He does his job. So I'm excited about it. It's another one of those guys that, like you said, is kind of continued to identify that identity. Kind of continued to push along that path. And excited.
Yes, I have one little critique of him. And I feel stupid even making this critique because the Broncos signed him for so little and he's here for, to do one role pretty much. So I really feel stupid making this critique, but I wish he was a little better at hitting his landmarks, like in open space. I wish he's good at catching somebody and like using a lot of effort and his size and pushing them out of the way. But if he were to able to like seal people off a little better or, I don't know. It's a stupid critique. I don't even want to get into it with the tight end. I'm happy the Broncos have him. I was messaging Frankie beforehand. I was like, dude, I would sign Mercedes Lewis to a 1-year deal to fill this exact role. The Broncos got Chris Manhurst, who
felt like minutes later.
That. Yes. So, hey, I'm happy about it. I'm cool. Let's move on to our next one here. And where do I want to go with it? Let's go with Jarrett Stidham. What is your opinion on Jarrett Stidham? Dude, he's been a meme on Twitter for a little bit now, so obviously Twitter's going to hate it. But Frankie, what is your opinion?
So, I'm tinfoil hat conspiracy, but what an interesting open to free agency that one of the first 5 signings was Denver bringing in a backup quarterback for I'm not trying to again, and I'm not trying to say he's making a ton of money. But a lot of people are like, oh, you think he's going to challenge Russ? No. But for teams that have established starting quarterbacks are usually willing to wait to bring in a backup because there's usually plenty of them and you don't have to overpay for them right away. Exactly as we saw today for when Gardner Minshew went for $1.5 million less. I'd say they're comparable. Arguably Gardner Minshew is better. I think he's better. But instead we have Jarrett Stidham for $5 million this season.
Yes. What that indicates, Frankie, is that there was a lot of interest from the Broncos in Jarrett Stidham, and then there was also a lot of interest from Jarrett Stidham to the Broncos. It was a mutual thing. It wasn't even like I'm going to test my free agency. And where that stems is, hey, the Broncos' new quarterback coach has a relationship with him. That's what.
So I didn't know that. What is the relationship? I'm sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'm forgetting exactly what it was, but I think they went to college together.
Okay, so that I didn't know. But even at the same time,
they have a relationship that I know.
something about, like, again, tinfoil hat, something about a team that just saw Russell Wilson have the season he had, and then the first move it was the second move for them, I believe, because I think they did Ben Jones first, or Ben Powers first. Was Jared Stidham in the first like hour of free agency. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is a guy that they're trying to have compete with Russ. Just thought it was kind of interesting. Like, like not something you'd have to rush to get done. You don't, and again, like, I guess you're friends with him, but they did give him more money than I think like a backup of Stidham's caliber should be get him, but getting, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. It made me rub the chin a little bit and say, like, I'm not trying to say they don't have faith in Russ, but like, that doesn't scream faith in Russell Wilson, does it? Like, I guess obviously you need to upgrade the backup quarterback room, but let's be honest here. Is this a huge upgrade to the backup quarterback room? Like,
I don't know. It feels like Stidham has, I don't know really for what reason, because every time I see him on the field, he's not very great. But coaches seem to love this guy. That's one thing. They see something in this guy that is in guys that have historically been good offensive coaches. Seem to really like Jared Stidham because he's been in the league for a little bit now, and he's going from team to team, and he keeps getting shots as a person that is getting like not just opportunities as a backup, but looks. Like he's gotten looks before. So, but to clear something up, I said earlier, Ian Rappaport tweeted when the signing was made, the deal, which includes $5 million guaranteed and $4 million more in upside, reunites him with Davis Webb, who he has known since he was a teenager. So that's the relationship there. Him and Davis Webb have a good relationship, and I'm sure that's why it was the first move. It was mutual interest, right? It wasn't just the Broncos, I have to go reach out to Stidham now. It was Stidham getting that call and being like, I want to work with the Broncos. That's kind of
and that's completely fair. I think it's just like it's just weird to me. Like, and again, like even what you're saying, like with the fact that's like everywhere he's gone, coaches seem to like giving him a shot. Like him having extra $4 million of incentive. Like it's almost one of those things where it's like, I'd love to know, like, how much of it do you think is based on if he ends up getting starts by the end of the year? Like, I'm just throwing random speculation.
I feel like if you were looking to replace Russ this year, wouldn't you rather have like a Gardner Minshew to be the placeholder though?
Probably, but wouldn't you want your QB coach's high school friend?
Yeah, I guess if it was the QB coach's decision, it would make a lot of sense to if Sean Payton relied heavily on Davis Webb on who he wants at the quarterback position, it would make a lot of sense in that, hey, I'm pushing hard for Jared Stidham.
It 100% makes
sense.
Guys,
I want to make this clear. This happens in everyday life as well. Like if I have a buddy that, is looking for a new job, I might push him to get in my industry and might push my boss to get him a job. That just happens. Is it always the good move? No. I've also pushed people into jobs where now I look like an ass because my friend's not working. So like that this type of stuff happens. And I guess we'll tell. It'll tell. I have faith in Davis Webb. We will see on Stidham because every time he gets a shot, it doesn't look very great. But like I said earlier, there's something to him, obviously, because coaches seem to love this guy. But let's move on to the next one here, and I want to move to the defensive side of the ball. Zach Allen. Draymond Jones left for the Seattle Seahawks. Was very sad to see that. But hey, the Broncos got a defensive lineman in Zach Allen. Frankie, what are your opinions on Zach Allen? And I also am going to throw a follow-up to you in that, do you think the less, Zach Allen went for less than Draymond Jones? Do you think it was worth taking a little step back and pay to go sign other players?
So I'll touch on Zach Allen first. I like Zach Allen. Zach Allen's a fine player. He's shown more flashes as he's kind of played in the league. He's kind of developed, I'd say, almost at a similar rate, you could say, as Draymond Jones. Hasn't had quite the production in recent years that Draymond Jones has had, but he's gotten close this last year. He was really productive in Arizona. Had a really good season next to J.J. Watt. He's got a lot of power, but like there are times where he does get moved off his spot pretty well. I wouldn't say Robbie made a good comment on this. Doesn't play with as consistent of technique as Draymond, whether it's out of a pass, whether it's pass rushing, whether it's run defending, whatever. I do believe that he is a bit worse than Draymond Jones, but he is a little bit younger. Like you said, they were able to get him for a little bit cheaper. But I will also say, I think like it's kind of malarkey to look at the situation and be like, oh, well, Denver just like couldn't afford Draymond Jones because like Denver has spent an obscene amount of money this offseason, guys. Like Denver could have afforded Draymond Jones. Like we don't like, I know, like we can, say what it is. Draymond Jones, it seemed like didn't want to be here, which is fine. Or Denver it seemed very mutual on both sides. They were very willing to give each other a fresh start, which is fine. Zach Allen is a guy who played for the last few years under Vance Joseph and has developed under him, so he will be familiar with the scheme that Vance is trying to run, so it makes sense. I would have preferred them to keep Draymond Jones. In my opinion, I think it's better to kind of reward the guys you've kept in the house. As I talked about this with you, like Zach Allen is a guy who has also had more injury history than Draymond Jones has, so George Payton has kind of continued that trend of taking risks on players with a bit more of an injury history than I'd say than guys that they have in house. And that's basically my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think Zach Allen's a good player. I don't think he's Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones just has, and the most obvious trait to sit there and scout is athleticism and like twitch and stuff like that. And that's what Draymond Jones, the differential trait there, I think, is that Draymond Jones has this twitch to him that just not a lot of other interior defensive linemen have, where he has it to the point where I can put him at edge in certain scenarios. And I think not only can he play it, but he can get after the passer playing edge like that. That's kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. And then I can also move that guy interior and he's going to just do crazy things there as well. Zach Allen's a good football player. I want to agree with your point that the Broncos could have signed him at the price point. Now, what's happened behind the scenes, I don't know. At that price point, they definitely could have, because, hey, the Broncos are trying to make a move on Chauncey Gardner right now.
Right.
So that tells you everything you need to know right there.
I mean, they've made signings like every day,
Right, exactly. So they could have made a move on him at the price point. The question there is, if Draymond Jones would have accepted. If it was an equal value, would he have accepted it? And that's kind of what we have to wait to hear, or we probably aren't even going to hear that. The Broncos matched the offer, and Draymond Jones was just like, hey, I'm going to Seattle. I don't want to mess around with the Broncos anymore. They did what they could have done.
You're not going to let him go.
Yeah, you're not going to throw more money at him. Please stay. No, match is fine. And if he wants to take your offer because he wants to be a Bronco, you then take him. I wouldn't go overboard or anything like that. Just because I want players that want to play here at the end of the day. And then I also, if he wants to go somewhere else, I'm willing to let him go somewhere else, because I'm looking out for the best interest in him too. If he's not happy here, no reason for him to be here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that. Zach Allen's a good football player. I would have preferred Draymond Jones even at a little higher of a salary, honestly, but I'm curious to know the details behind that whole situation with, all the different quotes and stuff like that we heard from Draymond in the past.
Yeah. No, and I mean, props to Draymond Jones, man. Draymond Jones was so fun to watch the past couple of years. I guess that's like let's cherish what we had with Draymond. We don't gotta, collectively look back and be like, Draymond wasn't as good, or, like all this stuff. Like, he really was, man. Like, Draymond was a player that developed really well for this team, was a leader in that locker room. We watched him come alive before our eyes and be one of their most productive pass rushers over the last couple of years on a team that had guys like Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. This has been a team that's had a lot of good defensive players, and Draymond Jones has been among the best of them. So, shout out Draymond Jones for everything he did for this team. But I mean, yeah, like you said, moving forward, if he didn't want to be here, that's the best way to kind of go. Zach Allen will be a decent replacement for him. I still think he's a plenty talented player. Hopefully he can kind of keep up that, development, whether it's in his pass rush game or just kind of getting more consistent as a run defender. And yeah.
Totally. Yeah. You know what? And I'm excited that he's in Seattle. I've always said this. Draymond Jones has been my favorite player on the Broncos for a couple of years now. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to everyone. I am a little biased towards Draymond Jones.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard for him because he's absolutely gotten better every single year. I don't think he's done getting better either.
No.
I think Seattle's got a really good player, and I'm excited to see him with Pete Carroll. And I just remember what Pete Carroll used to do with Michael Bennett with his create with his versatility up front.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly the same player at all, but Draymond Jones is also versatile and can move up and down that line of scrimmage and play multiple roles. So I'm excited to see it. I'm very excited to see it.
It's kind of funny. Like that Seattle team, like I know, like, there's kind of some bad blood. I don't really have bad blood with them. Like, I don't know. They traded us Russell Wilson, and then Russell Wilson wasn't that good. Like, I don't know. Like, but their roster has so many fun players. Like, it's really just like that. Like,
Tariq Woolen.
It's a Tariq Woolen, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett's still one of the most like entertaining deep threats in the league.
I like
Geno Smith's storyline has been one of the most like cool things to see in the past like 12 months in sports. Like, no, their team is sweet. Like, so I'm very, like you said, Draymond going there is really cool. Seeing what they end up adding to that defensive line next to him possibly in the draft would be cool. Like, yeah.
While we're on Seattle, I want to bring up our matchup last year real quick. And just that Patrick Surtain and DK Metcalf matchup was like one of the most fun film studies I've had ever. Like, that was ridiculous because they had Patrick Surtain. For those that don't remember, Patrick Surtain was mirroring DK, meaning that wherever DK was, Patrick Surtain was. It didn't matter alignment. If they threw him in the slot, Surtain was going to be there. If you throw him on the left side, Patrick Surtain was going to be there. Right side, Patrick Surtain was going to be there. And just watching the physicality of DK Metcalf and, straight line speed matchup with the technique and size of Patrick Surtain was a blast of a matchup, man. And Patrick Surtain more than held his own.
PS2, those first, like, I don't know, maybe obviously the whole season he was incredible. But those first, like, I don't know, like 5-6 games, even against, like, the one that stands out to me is the San Francisco game against Ayuk. He was incredible that game. I mean, those first 6 weeks, he was one of the best corners I think I've ever watched. Yeah, like he was incredible. Shout out Patrick Surtain, man.
Totally. Totally.
Just gotta nerd out over PS2 for a little, of course.
Yes, exactly. We need to get that in there. And I think our last one we kind of want to hit on, Frankie, unless I'm missing somebody here, and you tell me. Tremont Smith, the new corner the Broncos just signed from the Houston Texans. He did play down there, but he is also a very good special teams player. He's a guy that's going to return punts and kicks, and he's done it successfully in the past. I think this is more an indictment on Montrell Washington than anything, if I'm being honest. But what is your opinion there? Are you happy the Broncos are kind of, moving on or looking a different direction? Do you think that's a good idea that the Broncos are making?
I won't say happy. It's a good idea. Yes. I think as we saw last season, like, I'm not like, you can call it competition, but this was a guy who just got paid, like, I think they gave him $6 million. Like, this is the new kicking and punt returner for the Broncos. Like, Montrell Washington, sadly, last season, at least as a punt returner, he led the league in muff punts. He had the lowest average of anyone over 10 returns. He was not very good in the punt return game, wasn't much better in the kick return game. And by the end of the year, the special teams coach that was a big reason he was drafted got fired, and he himself had gotten benched. So this new corner is going to be the new returner. I'm excited to see what he can do. He's one of the few returners that I think he had a punt return last year. He's, those don't happen too often. He's one of the few guys that got to do that. I want to say his average is pretty good. I want to say it was like in 18.
Even with the Chiefs, he was a good punt and kick returner.
He's been a quality special teamer for a few years now, so that's really good to see. And then last year he got some opportunities getting to play outside corner. He's pretty good. He's not a nickel option, but he will get to be. I don't know if he'll end up being the fourth guy they go with. I think, like, again, like I was saying earlier, they do a really good job of kind of having a person that can be a body, so it's not a need. But you could still go into the draft and go get another body to be your fourth corner. You could grab one of these veterans that might make it to the end of the free agency period or training camp and decide that they still want to play another year and just have another guy be that fourth body in the room, So I think it's a really good pickup. This is a special teams unit that's needed improvement for a long time. I think he gives you a foundation. Maybe Montrell can kind of find his way to, or, develop somewhere else, or kind of develop on the practice squad for a little bit, kind of get some of those jitters out a little. And yeah, I think it's a really good move for a team that kind of needed to find some stability at that returner spot and has been trying to find that guy for however many years now.
Right. And I totally agree with you, man. Like, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's going to be a battle between these guys in training camp, but I really ultimately think that Tremont Smith is going to get it. I think if Montrell wants to make the roster, he's going to have to really prove that he can play offense, or he can be a vital part of the offense. He can play a role in the Broncos' success on offense this year. That's how he makes the roster. It's not going to be specifically returning anymore because Tremont Smith has evidence and proof and production that he can bring something to the defensive side of the ball. So that just makes him more valuable. It's not just going to be who's the best returner. It's going to be who's returning out of these returners, who's bringing value out besides that as well. And Tremont Smith has kind of proved that. So I ultimately think he's going to be the one that makes the roster. I heard Albright say that they might even be thinking about putting Montreal, more of just like an offensive weapon guy out there, not just a receiver. So we'll see what happens there.
Nice. Let's trade Jerry Jeudy and let's keep Montel Washington as a specialist on offense. Beautiful. I can't wait. Woo!
But anyways, guys, that is going to be our show today. I think we hit on the big. No, not today. But yes,
get it out of here.
While we're doing it, drink wine, Stefan. It's fantastic.
Drink wine, Stefan. It's delicious.
They're not even paying us for anymore at the moment, but wine, Stefan is amazing. I actually like the beer.
Yeah,
so that's how I was telling the truth.
We're endorsing the product, yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, Frankie, where can they find your amazing work, my man?
Frankie's Film on Twitter. I'm Frankie. Frankie's Film. Frankie's Film NFL on TikTok. I post my same clips that I put on Twitter. I put them over on the TikTok. Yeah, that's pretty much it for right now. We come up over here every Thursday. Oh, and I'm on the Irish NFL show.
Yes.
I should be on there like once every couple weeks. I don't really know if I should be announcing that yet. But like I'm on the Irish NFL show. I'd be joining up with them once a week. So if you're trying to listen to me and some Irish dudes and an Irish chick talk some football, join on over there or tune into our episodes because it's a pretty good time. Gonna try to be their guy across the pond. So where can they find your stuff, Joey?
Yeah, everybody just make sure that you're following the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. That's something I'm going to keep pushing. You might be the YouTube you're listening to right now. Please go subscribe. Please go share with friends. I'm really trying to grow it. I have some exciting news coming soon. I'm going to drop something soon on the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. If you guys want to check that out, make sure you're subscribed. And then also tomorrow, guess what, guys? PJ Locke on Let's Talk Broncos. He just got a big extension today, and I think tomorrow's going to be somewhat of a celebration. So make sure you're checking that out. But today was a really fun episode, man.
Yeah.
We're
fun popping bottles for Locke tomorrow. We got whole new Broncos players. Time is, it's a time to be alive. I'm going to go watch more film after this. It's great. It's a great time.
Me too. Well, until next time, guys, go Broncos.
Ooh, that was synced up well.